The unexpected tension that exploded on The View when Hollywood legend Harrison Ford appeared on the show quickly became one of the most talked about moments in daytime television. What was expected to be a respectful conversation about his new film and his storied career turned into an intense, unfiltered argument between Ford and longtime host Whoopi Goldberg. It all started innocently enough. Ford came in with his signature calm, understated presence, smiling politely and engaging. In the usual small talk, Whoopi, known for her directness and strong opinions, seemed eager to ask him some deeper questions. She began by referencing his history of playing morally conflicted characters and tied that into a broader conversation about Hollywood's responsibility in shaping political narratives. Ford, always more interested in talking about craft than controversy, seemed caught off guard. He brushed off the question lightly, saying he was just an actor doing a job. But Whoopi didn't back off. She challenged him by pointing out that someone with his legacy couldn't simply detach from the influence he had. She brought up his iconic role as Indiana Jones and questioned how he reconciled playing a hero with his lack of public commentary on real-world issues. Ford replied, a little sharper now, that he never saw himself as a spokesperson for anything, and that he wasn't comfortable with celebrities acting like experts on political or social matters. Whoopi countered by saying that silence from influential people often speaks louder than words. Could feel the studio temperature shift. The audience, which moments before had cheered Ford's arrival, now sat in quiet unease as the tone of the interview changed dramatically. Ford, clearly irritated, responded that it's not an actor's job to lecture people, and that entertainers should be allowed to entertain without being politicized. Whoopi's eyes narrowed slightly as she fired back, asking if that wasn't a convenient excuse to avoid taking a stand. Harrison didn't like that. He leaned forward and said, I didn't come here to be judged for not shouting into microphones. It was subtle, but for Mand a clear sign that the conversation had shifted from professional to personal. Whoopi, unshaken, replied, I'm not judging. I'm asking why someone in your position chooses not to engage when the world's on fire. Ford paused, then said, because I've been in the public eye for 50 years and I've learned that speaking out gets twisted. That comment drew a mixture of murmurs and scattered applause, but the underlying tension kept rising. Other co-hosts tried to jump in, offering lighter questions to cool things down. But the energy between Whoopi and Ford had already taken center stage. What was once an interview became something more like a philosophical battleground over the responsibility of fame. And it was clear that neither of them intended to back down. The conversation took another unexpected turn when Whoopi referenced Ford's past interviews where he'd briefly expressed environmental concerns. It's asking why he chose to speak out about climate but avoided other human rights topics. Harrison's face visibly stiffened. Because I care about science and facts, he replied, not moral panic whipped up by headlines. That line struck a nerve. Whoopi's tone sharpened as she accused him of minimizing real-world suffering by calling it panic. Harrison stood his ground, saying that he didn't come on the show to debate headlines and certainly not to be cornered into political confessionals. Whoopi replied calmly but firmly, then maybe this wasn't the right show for you today, Harrison. The silence in the studio was deafening. No one clapped. No one laughed. It was a rare, raw moment on live television, with two titans from different industries standing in opposition under the bright lights. Then came the breaking point. Ford, clearly frustrated, stood up mid-segment and removed his mic. He didn't yell, didn't curse, he simply said, I think I've said enough, and turned to leave. Producers scrambled backstage, unsure whether to cut to commercial or try to salvage the conversation. Whoopi stayed seated, staring after him, unfazed. The other hosts were visibly stunned, unsure how to proceed. The studio audience erupted into confused murmurs, some applauding his exit, others sitting in stunned silence. As Ford disappeared behind the curtain, Whoopi simply looked into the camera and said, well, folks, you never know what'll happen live. It was clear that moment would go down in talk show history as one of its most volatile and unforgettable exits. What had been billed as a celebration of Ford's career had turned into a public disagreement about the role of celebrity in an increasingly divided world. Asterisk, behind the scenes. The atmosphere was described by insiders as electric with confusion and disbelief. Ford's team reportedly exchanged heated words with producers, claiming that the interview had been misrepresented to them and that he had not been properly briefed on the tone of the questions. Meanwhile, Whoopi was said to have remained composed and unbothered, telling her colleagues that she simply asked the questions that matter. Staffers were divided. Some believed Whoopi had pushed too hard, while others said Ford had been overly sensitive and unwilling to have a real conversation. ABC executives were quick to issue a statement, saying the segment had unexpected intensity but affirming their respect for both Ford and Goldberg. However, social media was already ablaze with clips and hashtags. Hashtag Ford vs. Whoopi began trending, as fans and critics flooded the internet with their reactions. Asterisk, online opinions were sharply divided. Some hailed Harrison Ford as a legend who refused to be bullied into political statements, applauding him for standing up for personal boundaries. Others criticized him for being dismissive and defensive, suggesting that his avoidance of meaningful topics made him seem out of touch. Meanwhile, Whoopi was praised by many for holding a powerful figure accountable, while others accused her of turning an interview into an ambush. Commentators on YouTube, podcasts, and cable news shows replayed the moment over and over, analyzing facial expressions, body language, and tone to try and piece together what exactly caused the segment to implode. Even fans who weren't regular viewers of The View tuned in just to witness the incident. For a few days, it was the only thing anyone in entertainment was talking about. Asterisk, as with most media storms, Hollywood insiders began to weigh in. One anonymous studio executive claimed, this moment could hurt Ford's press availability for his upcoming projects, suggesting that publicists might now insist on no-live formats. Others believed it would pass quickly, noting that Ford's brand has always been about being gruff and private. Meanwhile, Whoopi remained silent on the matter, refusing to issue any clarifying statements beyond what was said on air. Some wondered if she might eventually offer a more measured reflection on a later episode, but as days passed, no such follow-up came. Harrison Ford also remained quiet, choosing not to address the incident publicly. That silence only added fuel to the media speculation. Was this the breaking point of celebrity interviews in the post-truth era? Was this how icons redefined their limits in the face of probing modern media? Asterisk. Even weeks after the incident, the echoes of what happened on that stage still lingered. Clips of Ford's walkout continued circulating online, turning into GIFs, memes, and mini-documentaries dissecting every second. Media outlets revisited the episode as part of broader discussions about how talk shows have evolved from friendly promotional spaces into unpredictable battlegrounds. The larger conversation shifted toward how public figures should navigate interviews. Are they expected to be entertainers, philosophers, or activists? In that one moment, Harrison Ford reignited a conversation that stretched far beyond The View, sparking debates about privacy, responsibility, and the blurry space between artistry and advocacy. Whatever side you stood on, one thing was certain: when Harrison Ford left that stage, he didn't just exit an interview, he stepped into a cultural firestorm that no one will soon forget.